Hello everyone, I'm Matthew Brown. Thank you for tuning in to MLB Life Lessons. I want to talk today about giving up your racket. You know, I had an opportunity years ago to take a wonderful course. It was called the Landmark Forum. And one of the sessions was about rackets. I couldn't figure out what in the world they were talking about. But you know, they really use this definition of rackets as a repetitive behavior that is somewhat destructive, but it has a way of giving us an emotional payoff, so we're not willing to give it up. As I am a student of the Word of God, I was reading in John chapter 5 about the guy that was at the pool called Bethesda. And he's been there for a while. And you know the story. They ask, Jesus comes along and says, do you want to be made whole? And he says, I got nobody to help me. And every time I try to get to the pool, somebody's stepping in ahead of me. And they get healed, and then I'm stuck here. Notice the text says, I think, that he was there for about 38 years. He had been there longer than Jesus had been alive. And he had seen a number of people come and go, but he was never healed. So what I understood the racket to be was that he sort of made a profession, he made a living out of his illness, out of him being a victim. He made a living out of him being non-productive, but yet it gave him something. So I want to ask you today, what's your racket? What is your destructive behavior that's a repetitive behavior that is paying you off emotionally, so much so that you're not willing to give it up? Maybe your racket is your attitude. Maybe your racket is you feeling victimized, that everybody's after you, that nobody understands you, and so you've created a whole life and personality around that racket. You don't want to give it up. Maybe your racket is your hustle. Maybe it's the fact that you really don't want to trust God. Your racket is not to really walk by faith, but to sort of walk by your own dimensions, about, kind of walking to the beat of your own drum. What's your racket? What's the thing, that repetitive behavior that is no good for you, and you're not willing to release it? You're not willing to let it go. I will tell you, your racket is holding up your life. If you really want to advance your life powerfully, you got to give that up. You've got to let that go. You've got to see it for what it is and determine, why won't you release it? It's because there's an emotional payoff. Everybody has an emotional payoff for the racket that they hold on to. See, that's the real issue, that faith is not a racket. Faith is, now, there are those who will clearly dispute that. They will say that, faith is a racket. Faith is a repetitive behavior that puts ultimate trust in God to deliver and to produce what is really desired in life. And so the payoff is the fact that we actually trust Him, and then the payoff is the fact that He gives to us the desires of our heart. What racket? What really destructive behavior? Is it your thought life? Is it maybe you're abusing drugs, alcohol, men, women, you're playing lottery, whatever it is that's destructive, that's taking away from you? It's not enhancing your life. Think about it. Maybe your racket is lying. Maybe that's your racket, that's your game. It's a repetitive behavior that stops you from growing in life. Whatever it is, I want you to identify it, and I want you today to give it up. How do you give up your racket? You identify that this behavior has done more damage to you, it has done more harm to you than good. That this repetitive behavior has hurt your family, has messed up your children, has stunted their ability to grow, to think, to live, to be vibrant, to dream. Because your racket, your personality is so big, it is so forceful, it is so strong, that you have really stunted the growth of people around you. I know people who have a racket of wanting to be larger than they really are. And so their racket is to really invest themselves. And you can see it. You can see a racket by over-exaggeration. When a person is constantly making their image bigger than what they are, and trying to always project and be something that they're not, it's a racket. And because people buy into it, what do they get? They get that immediate gratification that somebody believes the lie that they're projecting. I really want to encourage you to give up your racket and really move on with your life. It's time to stop lying to yourself and being something that you're not, and having a repetitive behavior that brings no benefit. I hope to see you next Tuesday as we continue on Life Lessons.